Hello again, this is author Nathaniel Sewell. In my last video, we talked about my chair, my Rising Sun chair. You're probably wondering, what does the Rising Sun chair and First Amendment and stand-up comedians all have in common? Interesting. Well, this chair, as I said before, to me, represents freedom of speech. My right as an American citizen to say what I want to say, as long as it's, doesn't cross a certain line of being ugly and mean or inciting some sort of violent reaction. I would never do that. Nor will I here, obviously. I don't trust any of the politicians in our current system. I don't understand how someone like Nancy Pelosi or Mitch McConnell can now be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It just doesn't add up to me. I actually wrote about it in my current novel, Hey Man, Where's Dr. Wang? It's a satire and it's biting. It's about the Chinese Communist Party's and George Soros's attempt to tear apart my country. And at some point in time, I decided I'd be a little political. I'm not political in the sense of being either for or against any political parties. If you think about it, George Washington warned about political parties in his farewell address. He really did. In fact, I'm going to share with you some of the words, and you'll see them on the screen. With that, we had another general, hundreds of years later, warn us about the military-industrial complex, none other than Dwight David Eisenhower. So they've been warning us all this time, and I don't know if we actually listen. It's terrible. It's terrible for our children. Think about what we leave behind. I'm 59 years old. I've written many novels. Some people like them, some people don't. I write them because I want to, because it's my right as an American citizen to say what I want to say. It's interesting to me when you really think about that chair behind me and what freedom of speech really means. I have a wonderful opportunity to impact people that I'll never meet. There are people right now being killed or jailed because their rights are being restricted, or the fact that they prefer one religion over another. They're literally being murdered in this world right now. If you're a Uyghur in China, which are, if I remember correctly, are Muslims, they're in camps. They're in work camps. Look it up. I don't know how to spell Uyghur very well. It's in my book. But getting back to, let's say, the 5th chapter of Hey Man, Where's Dr. Wang? I have a certain character that just tells the character Benjamin to grift. Whatever you do, Benjamin, grift. Communism, socialism, capitalism, whatever ism, doesn't matter. Just learn to grift. And you might be able to figure out whom I'm referring to. But then you kind of go, well, what's the deal with the stand-up comedians, Robert? That doesn't, where are you going with this? And I'm going with free speech. If we don't have good stand-up comedy that's biting, we don't have any parameter for our culture to really stop and think. Lenny Bruce, look up Lenny Bruce, was really the first one to get really shut down. They threw obscenity laws at him, things like that. They convicted him. Unfortunately, he died of a drug overdose, which is terrible. But I look at people like Richard Pryor, George Carlin. Those two really started pushing that free speech pattern out where you stop to think. Now we have people like Dave Chappelle. You may like or dislike Mr. Chappelle. I don't know him. I think he's funny. I think he's very funny. But I'd also say he's very thoughtful. I may not always agree with what he says, but he makes me laugh. And he also makes me think. And I think there's the thin line and the cross through between General Washington, General Eisenhower, and how they spoke the truth. We don't have good stand-up comedy without people like Dave Chappelle. You may find it interesting, the whole storytelling thing is really what I'm about. I love storytelling. I love people that do storytelling. If you follow a good comedian like Rodney Dangerfield, for example, he follows Aristotle's arc. Look that up. Aristotle came up thousands of years ago with the how you set a story together. You have a beginning, you have a middle, and an end. It's literally that simple. And if you listen to a good comedian, they follow that. They have your little hook early on, and you kind of go with it, and then they come right back around, and that's how they finish. Rodney Dangerfield was the best of all time to me as far as that beginning, middle, and end in less than 30 seconds. You know, he always told a joke. I'm going to attempt this. I am not a professional comedian, but I'm going to attempt to tell you a Rodney Dangerfield joke and prove my point. He went, "I was an ugly kid. My mother didn't love me. My mother didn't love me." You know, Ty. He goes, "One time I went to my mom and I said, 'Mom, why didn't you breastfeed me?' My mom said, 'I just want to be friends.'" Did you notice that? How it had a beginning. I was an ugly kid. I wasn't loved. Everybody like, "Oh, okay." And then it rises. He goes, finally asked his mom a question. Like we probably all have. At some point you ask your parents, "Why did you do this?" or "Why did you do that?" Beginning, middle, and then the end punchline, which was, "I just want to be friends." Less than 30 seconds. That's good storytelling to me. That's why stand-up comedians are so important to our culture. That they literally poke at the big bear, poke at the government, poke at whatever it is, poke at things in our culture that aren't right. I will tell you one thing in closing, and why this chair is so meaningful to me, and free speech is so meaningful to me, because in truth, I've never told anyone this. Not even my wife, ex-wife, not even my best friend. The one comedian that saved my life was Steve Martin. Believe it or not. He had an album a long time ago. It was probably 1980. My friend Mitch in junior high, we exchanged gifts. We used to do Secret Santa stuff. And he gave me a double album by Steve Martin called Wild and Crazy Guy. And I'll show you the album cover here in a second. But I'm 12 years old and I listened to this album, Wild and Crazy Guy. And I was having a tough time. I felt very uncomfortable. And, you know, if you read my first novel, Body Socks, you'd understand. I dealt with that very difficult phase of my life. I worry about teenagers. I worry about young adults because I know what's going on in their minds sometimes. And I'm lucky I'm 59 years old, so I can kind of say things that maybe others are a little afraid to for career reasons and other. But I'm listening to Steve Martin. It's an album. And I thought, man, this guy's nuts. He's crazy. But he made me laugh. And because he made me laugh, that's why I think stand-up comedians are so important. Because from laughing, it gave me endorphins. It kind of told me, well, there's other people out there that maybe understand me, maybe understand where I'm coming from. So, you know, it gave me hope. It gave me hope to just keep going. Don't do anything stupid. You know, I think kids today have it much tougher than I had. And the reason I say that is these cameras and these phones, it's instant. You're all over the world instantly. You can't take it back. If you do something that gets on a camera and they share it, I can see where bullying could be extremely dangerous. I've lived that. I know what it feels like. It's not pleasant. If you're in that situation now, just listen to me and just say, it's going to be okay. Ask yourself that question. I always tell people to ask. I never know. Because you never know, you might give yourself some hope. Because you may think, well, things aren't always going to be bad. So that's why stand-up comedians are so important. Because they make us laugh. Maybe make us forget our problems for about a half hour or whatever. It's a beautiful, beautiful art. I can't do it, but I respect those that can. And I respect Steve Martin because he saved my life. Sorry I had to compose myself. Got a little personal there. At any rate, stand-up comedians are our culture's filter, in my mind. When you have an oppressive government when you have things going on in your life, when there are things that you wish somebody would say something about, they give us that freedom that no other culture really allows. You know, Steve Martin, he really did save my life. I'm not kidding. I laughed, and I needed to laugh. I needed wacky, and he nailed it. So I have to say thank you to him for that. But I also have to say, stand-up comedians like Lenny Bruce and Richard Pryor, all those guys, George Carlin, and now Dave Chappelle. And let's not forget Mel Brooks, Monty Python. The list is long. But the one thing they do is they make fun of things that can be rather difficult to talk about as a society. They make fun of the government when they should, when they point these things out. You don't know the impact you have on another human being. And that's the reason I talked about Steve Martin, because the impact he had on my life. He'll never know, but that's fine. But the First Amendment's about the ability to make fun of ourselves, particularly when our government gets out of control. And for that, I am thankful. I'm thankful to George Washington. The reason that chair is so important to me, it inspires me. And I hope it inspires you too.